What we're doing today is going to show you a quick evaluation process of receiving the RMA in, opening the box, and basically doing disassembly and evaluation to find basically what's going on with the pump itself, pump and motor. So once we receive the unit in at first, we basically want to write down the date of when it was received, all basic information that we can. We usually like to have customers write the RMA number on the outside of the box so I can identify it. And we have a evaluation form here that we generally like to fill out. So basically what it's showing here is the date received, the date serviced, the contact, we've got the RMA number, and everything else on this form we'll fill out either during the evaluation process or at the end of the process and take any notes. We'll go ahead and open up the box and see what we got. Hopefully the end user packaged it properly. From time to time you do get something that gets damaged. And one quick note, it is nice to have some gloves, rubber gloves. You never know what you can find in these pumps, whether it's spiders, snakes, lots of debris, fish algae. You're going to find a lot of stuff, so just be aware of that. The problem reported with this particular pump was that it was a bearing failure. There's several different things that could actually cause a bearing to wear. Most commonly it's due to water or moisture that's been exposed to the inside. So the first thing that we want to do is check the continuity between the electrical windings. And the way to do that is just to get a standard multimeter. So we'll put it on that selection there. And then what we want to do is grab the end of the electrical cord, and what we want to do is set one lead to one prong, the other lead to the other prong, and we are getting a reading right here. So that's good. That's telling us that we are getting continuity through the windings. So what we want to check for next is a short to ground, which basically means the motor is bad. And what we want to do there is keep one lead on one of the terminals and connect the other lead just to the ground plug. So you see here we're not getting any reading, so that's good. That's telling us that there's not much moisture, there hasn't been any moisture exposed to the inside, there's not a short to ground. So electrically, the motor is safe to use. What we could also do from time to time is plug it in, just to see, give it a quick startup to see how the motor sounds. Although considering there's a lot of popcorn inside here, it's going to be a mess. Everything's going to be blowing around. So I'm going to take the flute off first. Down here it might be kind of hard to see, but towards the base here you can see where it's either been sitting in a little bit of water or it's in a real wet or moist environment. You can kind of see a slight water line here in this area, as well on the base. So those are just little signs you want to look for. So once those bolts are out, we can then just basically tap on the volute discharge, and we can see we're now exposed to the impeller. You can see you want to inspect all parts here. Nothing looks too severe, just got some algae buildup on the inside. I don't see any scoring. Sometimes you can see some severe scoring from debris getting caught or clogged between the volute casing and the impeller face here. So when that happens, you'll usually see some scoring on the inside as well as on the face of the impeller here, but that doesn't seem to be a problem here, so we're good there. Again, you kind of want to just look through threads on the outside edge as well as on the female threads on the inside. I don't see anything bad here. You kind of want to look for nicks and marks to see if there's any damage, which these seem to appear to be alright. Another note here is on the serial label, you always want to record this information. The first 4 digits is the date code. It's 1101, so what that's telling us is it was built in 2011 in the first month of January. And that's basically what we know, what to go by as far as a warranty period. So at this point, we can go ahead and give it a quick spin by hand, and as you can hear, that is pretty rough, so it's definitely telling us that there's a bearing failure. So now we'll just need to get inside the motor and see what the root cause of that is. Sometimes the easiest way to get the impeller off is just grab it and act like you're going to spin it clockwise, but then stop and let the impeller shaft continue to spin clockwise. But the way to take this impeller off is you have to spin it counterclockwise. And that's not going to allow me to do it, so this impeller's on there pretty good. So you want to get a screwdriver or a little tool to stick in the back of the fan to hold that in place. Which we were able to break it free. And we'll just unscrew that impeller all the way off. And again, looking for anything, you want to look through the vane holes here just to see if there's any debris that might be clogged. Everything looks pretty clear here. I don't see any damage or anything to be alarmed about. This is the ceramic seat, which is part of the mechanical seal. And you want to basically look for any wear and tear, if it's scratched any place, which this seems to be in good shape. We want to go ahead and replace it anyway, just because anytime you open up a pump assembly, you want to put a new seal in there. So even though this doesn't look anything bad, we want to go ahead and replace it, just to be on the safe side. The other half of the mechanical seal is the spring-loaded carbon graphite seal head portion. And again, you're basically looking for the same evidence, any type of abrasion, scratches, because this is where we're going to have a seal leak. The bracket itself, the bracket face, doesn't look like it's in bad shape. Everything's no normal abuse there as far as algae buildup. So at that point we can go ahead and loosen these bracket bolts up, and it's just a 9/16 socket on these. So, and what I'm looking for is evidence of a seal leak. And basically what you'll see is a little drip mark like you see down here. And that's telling us that the seal was leaking. And it was probably just due to normal wear. The mechanical seal is a part that does fail periodically. But the good thing is it is easily replaceable. Generally, you will have some residue back there, but in a lot of other cases you won't see any evidence of a leak or anything like that as well. So again, coming back here to the front of the seal face, you should be able to see some normal abrasion, maybe some pitting, but again, that's all just standard wear and tear on the mechanical seal face itself. So basically what we've done now, we've evaluated the main components of the actual pump casing, which there's not a whole lot to it. And again, spinning the motor, you can hear that noise and that click. So that's telling us that there's definitely a bearing issue. And now we want to evaluate the inside of the motor and see what it looks like there. We can remove that fan cover. This is another area where you could see water lines if the unit has been flooded. Generally you'll see some horizontal lines coming across the back end of the motor. Could be different lengths up the motor depending on how much water was sitting in. And then what you'll also see is evidence of some debris or water lines on the fan cover itself, which I do not see any evidence of that. So that's kind of a good indication telling us that the unit has not been flooded or has not been exposed to water. There's a little C-clamp in place here, which is just keeping the fan on, which is just a pressed fit. So once you get that little C-clamp out, you'll just need to pry this fan off. And again, these are a little tricky. Sometimes they come off very easily. Other times you just got to pry them off. And possible from time to time it is just plastic, so you can break these. But luckily I didn't have to break that one, so that can be reused. Once you get to the back of the motor, there's 4 long through bolts, 2 here and 2 here. Those long bolts go directly through the whole entire length of the motor and connect to this front end bell. And that's what basically crimps the whole motor together. So we'll need to remove those long bolts. So what we see here is a little bit of rust that has been exposed. So water has been exposed to the inside, whether it's just condensation buildup. But again, without seeing any water lines anywhere else, it's kind of hard to say. But again, once we get inside, we'll be able to see exactly what it looks like. So once you get those long bolts out, at that point on the back stub of the motor shaft, you just want to tap it a couple times. And that's going to cause the rotor to push all the way through the front end of the motor. So once we get that loosened up, look at all that rust and buildup. We've got the rotor here, which again you want to look for water lines, which you see very clearly right here on the inside. So water was basically sitting about an inch high inside the motor, and with the amount of rust and water that's been exposed to the inside, we know this unit was flooded, even though there was not any evidence on the outside. But a lot of end users try to be tricky. They try to clean up the motors. They try to get rid of any evidence like that, so they can claim, hey, it's never been flooded. But anyways, again, you do see the visible water lines there. You see them inside the actual stator here. And you can also see a lot of the rust and buildup that's on the stator inside the motor here. We tested for the continuity, which at that point was telling us that there was not any short of ground, so the motor itself has actually dried up good enough to where technically we still can reuse this motor, even though with all the rust. We can clean up the inside of the stator with just a wire brush. That'll kind of clean it up a little bit. But at that point, it's telling us we know the motor was noisy from the bearings, so we can spin the front end bell. Nothing too severe, but if you spin that back bearing, you hear that little noise with it. So at this point, we could take notes that we first spoke about on this evaluation board. We could fill out all the information that we found with each individual part. We could document what the motor looks like. We could physically even take pictures if we wanted to. And at that point, this kind of concludes the evaluation of this Sequence 4000 unit. And at that point, we'd fill out the rest of the information, get back to the customer, let them know what we found, what we need to do to the motor, and also quote at that point, because since this motor has been flooded, it does void the warranty. And that basically concludes the process of the evaluation.